Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we just finished talking all about the Brandon Aiyuk updates. He is most likely on the move soon. In principle, deals are done with both the Browns and the Patriots. It's just up to him and his agent and those teams to see if they can get a contract worth out. Although dark horse, the Steelers reportedly are still in that conversation for Brandon Aiyuk. So we'll see what happens there. In this segment, we're going to take a quick break from football, talk a little bit about Olympic basketball. The quarterfinals just wrapped up as we went into break. The U.S. finished up a blowout of the Brazilian team. We'll talk about that as well as the other three quarterfinal matchups in just a second. But before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go and throw it in the comments, throw it in the chat. We'll get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Tuesday afternoon. But like I was saying in this segment, we're going to get into Olympic basketball a little bit. The Olympic basketball quarterfinals have wrapped up officially. Like I said, the U.S. dismantling Brazil. They went on. Brazil looked like they were going to make it close for a second there. They went on a 10-0 run in the second quarter before the U.S. finished them off with a 15-0 run heading into halftime. They end up winning that game 122 to 87. That's the most points scored this entire Olympics. They shot an insane clip, over 60% from the field, although that game never really was going to be that close. There's a couple games that I wanted to focus on, and I'll start off here with the Serbia-Australia game, because that probably was the best game so far of this entire Olympic bracket. Serbia and Australia went into overtime. Serbia takes the W 95-90 after Jokic goes off, sparks a 24-point comeback, a massive comeback in Olympic basketball. It's been a very different game, right? Jokic is still out there doing what he needs to do. I was really impressed by the Serbian defense, especially down the stretch. That's not to say anything against Australia. While their two big stars, Patty Mills and Josh Giddey, went off, especially Patty Mills in that first half. I believe he had over 20 points in that first half. It was insane. They both shot just about 50% from the field, 60 to 40% from three, and it still wasn't enough. Jokic is just that special. If you're looking at the box scores of these games, if you're just looking at the box scores, especially of that Serbia game, there's no one that really sticks out too much. You obviously have Jokic, right? Jokic is always going to do his thing, and he is the best player in the world. He absolutely is continuing to prove that, putting up 21 points on pretty solid efficiency, 9 for 17. He was 0 for 3 from 3, but he almost puts up a triple-double in the Olympics, just 2 assists away, which is something that is a lot harder to do in FIBA and the Olympic basketball than is in the NBA. But Jokic goes off. I mean, the next highest scorer is Bogdanovic. He didn't show up his 28 like he did in his last game, but 17 on really not great shooting. They're still able to come back from a 24-point hole and win this game. The two leaders in the Australian clubhouse, of course, Olympic Patty Mills obviously always does his thing. It's Olympic Patty Mills, 11 for 21, 2 of 5 from 3, finishes with 26 points, and Josh Giddey also playing a great game, which is something that I wasn't expecting this Olympics, but he's going off here. 11 for 20, 3 for 5 from 3, and 25 points, along with 5 rebounds and 4 assists. They were both doing their best to stay in this game. Unfortunately, Jokic and the defense, especially the defense from the Serbian national team, was just too much for Australia to handle, and Serbia is taking on the U.S. a rematch. The third time these two teams will play. Obviously the first time was scrimmage, second time was in their group. This is the third time they'll meet up. This is in the semifinals, and we'll preview that game in a second. But on the other side of the bracket, Germany takes on Greece. Germany was the other top seed next to the US. They also went 3-0 in group play. They take down Giannis, who has been the best player in this Olympics, averaging 27 and 7, heading into this game. He's been phenomenal, basically willing Greece out of the group stage. Unfortunately, he is not enough. Again, Dennis Schroeder does his thing. He wasn't lighting up the box score. No one scored more than 20 points, but you had a lot of great contributions from a lot of these guys. Pretty solid shooting from Dennis Schroeder coming off the bench, still having 31 minutes played, 13 points off of the bench, as well to go with 8 assists. But they just shut down Greece. Greece is a team that is basically just Giannis. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It got them this far into the Olympics. This is, I believe, the furthest that they've made it in the Olympics in my entire lifetime. This is great basketball success for Greece, and I think that's one of the things that needs to be mentioned here. I mean, outside of poor 3-point shooting, which I think most teams outside of the U.S. have struggled with in the quarterfinals, and we'll get to that especially in the France Canada game, which was the most anticipated quarterfinals matchup for good reason. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but it's one of those things that is completely different. It's a very similar game to the NBA, but it's a lot slower. You're obviously not seeing these as high scoring. As these games aren't as high scoring, obviously. And getting to the biggest, most exciting matchup of the quarterfinals, or at least the one that was hyped up the most. Canada Canada loses to France 73-82. Canada and France are two of the most star-studded rosters in all of this Olympic team. Obviously, excluding the U.S. here, that has a team of monsters over there, right? This is a France and Canada team that, next to Germany, were the two that were in contention to take that medal. Now they're both going to now France is going to take on Germany in yet another high octane matchup that we'll talk about in a second. But the story of this game was the 3-point shooting. This was really where Canada was going to press its advantage, right? France has its tandem of big men down there. Obviously, Victor Wembanyama and Rudy Gobert are the two headliners. They weren't particularly active in this game, scoring-wise. They didn't have their greatest shooting nights. Neither did Canada. The guard play for Canada, led by Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, R.J. Barrett, Dylan Brooks to a certain extent. These guys are where they were going to press their advantage. You're going up against the likes of Cordonier, Nick Batum. These are guys that aren't the greatest as far as guard play goes, and that's been the weakness of France this whole tournament. The interior defense was great, but the exterior defense was where they struggled. Canada shot 23% from 3. 5 for 21, and that was really the downfall. You saw it a lot, especially down the stretch, for both France and Canada. They were both really struggling to hit their deep range shots. Victor Wembanyama was 0 for 6 from 3 on his own, and I think the star of this game was Cordonier. He puts up 20 points on 5 for 4 from 3, 6 of 10 from the field. He's a rising star here. He really was the driving force, keeping France ahead of Canada. That's not to say that the defense and some of the stars weren't doing their thing, but he was the real reason that they were able to push through. Now, Canada was favored in this matchup. This was still a really good game. It just is that no one could make the basketball. It feels like it was almost a double rim out there from how many bricks that both of these teams were putting up. They were loud bricks too. It was some of the loudest sound off the rim that I've heard watching a basketball game in a very, very, very long time. But it is what it is. Heading into the semifinals, not quite for medals yet, but we do have an exciting matchup between Germany and France. France, with their interior defense, is going to be tough for Germany to get in, but if Germany can, they have a lot of they have a lot of shooters on the outside, right? They got a lot of guys that can knock down their threes, and that is where the weakness is for France. I think Germany is going to take this. It has been pretty much set up for a Germany-US clash in the finals this whole time. But if Germany shoots 20% from three, like Canada did in this last game, there's no reason why France, with their interior, and we've seen how important big men are in this Olympics, with the U.S. especially. Bam Adebayo doing his thing a couple of times, Anthony Davis dominating down low, Joel Embiid has started to get his footing, but it's really been the centers for the U.S. Aside, and also in the shooters, but the U.S. is kind of an outlier there. But the centers have been dominating down low, getting those extra possessions with the rebounds. It's going to be kind of a clash of cultures here, I would say, basketball culture. Obviously, on the other side of things, you have the U.S. taking on Serbia, and we've seen that matchup go a couple of times. They've got Jokic, Serbia does, so you can never really count them out. The U.S. does have that super team. LeBron got elbowed in the face today. He seemed like he was going to be fine, but that's something to monitor there. Although, in all honesty, and not to sound sacrilegious or anything here, I don't think this U.S. team needs LeBron James. This LeBron James has been the leader of this team, and has been the best player on this team, but they don't need him. That's how stacked this team is, and that's kind of crazy for me to say. But they can survive Serbia without him. They could probably win a gold without him, to be completely honest. Although you could say that about anybody on that team. Just pick one person, they could probably win a gold without them, as long as you're not missing 2, 3, 4 guys at a time. But he should be fine, and this should be a good matchup. Jokic is gonna do his thing. If the defense, especially down the stretch that Serbia was playing with, can show up to that game against the U.S. in the semis, they might cause some issues. Although, again, I don't think you can do much against this U.S. basketball team. I think they're kind of overpowered, to be completely honest with you. But anyway, that's what's going on in the U.S. in the Olympic basketball for the men. We'll take a look at the women tomorrow, as well as some more breakdowns for the rest of the Olympics. We're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we're going to talk about the depth charts that came out for a lot of NFL teams. There were some surprising moves on there surrounding especially some young rookie quarterbacks. So we'll talk about all of that and more coming up next here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.